So hey guys, so welcome to another Warframe video where today we're going to take a quick look at the Incarnon Prisma Gorgon. You can get the Incarnon Genesis adapter for any of the Gorgons from the Steelpath version of the circuit game mode. Once you have the adapter and a Gorgon of course, you can take them over to Cavallero in the Chrysalith to combine them. Now this does require some additional resources, so you will also need 20 Pathos Clamps which you can get from the Autoworm boss fight, 60 Rune Marrow which you can get in the Undercroft, and 60 Tasoma Extract which comes from a mushroom that grows in the caves in the Paradox. This allows you to evolve the weapon and it unlocks its Incarnon mode. You can build the Incarnon meter by headshotting enemies, and once you have any level of charge you can press the secondary fire button to activate it. In this mode the weapon fires a projectile that will embed itself in whatever it hits and after a short delay of 1.2 seconds explodes, dealing pure heat damage. Now while the explosion radius isn't huge necessarily, it's about 5 meters, the fall off on it is very small. You only lose about 10% damage on the edge of the explosion. You also may have noticed that you have to charge the projectile before you fire it. You don't actually have to hold the button down, you just press the fire button, then the weapon charges, which actually takes quite a while without any fire rate, and then the projectile is fired. And finally, before you can take advantage of the evolutions and the benefits that those provide, you're gonna have to do a few things with the Gorgon. So you're gonna have to finish a solo mission with it, you're then gonna have to kill 100 enemies with this Incarnon mode, and finally you're gonna have to kill 30 enemies without reloading, which isn't all that difficult with a weapon that has a 120 round magazine. The first evolution option we have here is between Hunter's Mantra, which gives you 5 extra base damage, and then if you have a channeled ability active, you get 3 meters of punch through and 40% better accuracy, and Hoplite Virtue, which gives you 5 base damage, and then on a shield break you get extra 8 damage for 8 seconds. The second choice is between Resonant Restore, which if you're reloading from an empty magazine gives you 15 extra rounds in the magazine and it stacks up to 3 times. Rapid Reinforcement for 50% faster reload speed, which for a Gorgon is actually very nice, and then Void's Guidance for negative weapon recoil. And last but definitely not least, you have a choice between Survivor's Edge for 2% extra base crit and 6% extra base status, Elemental Balance for 12% extra base status, and Absolute Valor for 6% extra base crit chance. I ended up going with a combination of Hoplite Virtue for the damage and then additional damage on the occasional shield break. This doesn't happen all that often, but you know, it's not too bad. Then I have Void's Guidance for the negative recoil because the Gorgon kicks quite a bit, and then Absolute Valor for the extra crit chance. For the build, we have a pretty straightforward hybrid with Viro and Hunter munition, so we run Galvanized Chamber for multi-shot, Vital Sense and Critical Delay or Point Strike for crit, Galvanized Aptitude for status chance and extra damage based on the number of status effects on the enemy. Then we have Val Acceleration for a ton of fire rate at the cost of a little bit of damage. This is worth it, especially if you're going to use the Incarnon mode, because without a lot of fire rate, the Incarnon mode takes forever to charge and fire. Then we of course run Hunter Munitions for the occasional slash procs from crits, Malignant Force and Rhyme Rounds for Viro and status, as well as Primary Merciless for damage and reload speed. The enemies we're going to test against in the Simulacrum are the same as always, so level 150 in Steelpath, and we have 10 Corrupted Butchers, mainly to build up Merciless, and then 10 Corrupted Heavy Gunners to actually show the damage. And speaking about damage, it's solid enough, but it feels pretty damn bad. I really don't like it, because even with Val Acceleration, it still takes a while to charge up the Incarnon shot, then there is travel time on the shot itself, so it takes time for it to hit something, and then once it finally does hit something, it has to arm for 1.2 seconds before it finally explodes. Now imagine, right, sitting through all of that and then not getting a slash proc from Hunter Munitions. Now, an argument could be made here that it's okay for the Incarnon mode to not do solid single target DPS because the Gorgon, with all the evolution buffs, is actually quite strong on its own. But first of all, that's bollocks because the other Incarnon guns do it just fine. And second of all, the Incarnon mode isn't all that great for AoEing things down either because the mechanic on it is similar to the lens except for 2 things. The area is much smaller and it doesn't slow enemies down with a cold proc. So even the enemies you hit with the AoE can just walk out of it in the 1.2 seconds it takes for it to detonate. Now at first I thought this wouldn't be that big of a deal, but turns out it's actually very annoying, especially since you don't have that many shots in the Incarnon mode. You can build up to a maximum of 20 shots, so wasting shots on enemies that just walk out of the explosion before it goes off sucks. Also, I almost forgot about this, if you hit any fluid with it in any tile set, it fizzles out and doesn't explode. I genuinely had to force myself to activate Incarnon mode on the Gorgon when I was recording the gameplay footage for this video, because I just don't want to do it. I much prefer to just use the Gorgon as it is and not use the Incarnon mode at all. So overall, this was a pretty big disappointment for me, with the only redeeming feature being the evolutions buffing the Gorgon quite a bit, so we can actually do decent DPS on its own. So the only time I would ever recommend this, assuming they don't change the Incarnon mode in the future, is if you're a big fan of the Gorgon and you just want to buff the stats with the evolutions. That's pretty much it. And as always guys, I thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it helpful. I would like to extend a special thank you to all the channel members. Thank you very much guys, I really appreciate it. And if you would like to become a channel member as well, you can check out the memberships and stuff down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.